With cutting-edge technology and determined investigators and scientists, finding answers in a difficult case no longer seems as impossible as it once did. Though reopening old wounds and shattering the hopes of loved ones is tremendously hard, it is important to bring answers and justice to unsolved cases. Join us for today's episode as we examine 3 cold cases that were recently solved. Fawn Cox. On July 26, 1989, 16-year-old Fawn Cox was viciously murdered in her bedroom at her family's home near 9th and Van Brunt Boulevard in Kansas City, Missouri. Investigators determined that someone had climbed up to her bedroom window, broken in, and sexually assaulted her before strangling her to death. Her family slept through the horrific ordeal. They only found Fawn the following morning when she failed to turn off her ringing alarm clock. On the night of her murder, the 16-year-old had been working the late shift at Worlds of Fun, the theme park, finishing at 11 p.m. She subsequently came home and went straight to bed, as she had another shift the next day. Her sister, Felicia, remembered, "I went over to shake her. Come on, get up." But she had been gone for a while. She added that the family's noisy air conditioning units likely contributed to the reason why nobody heard a struggle that night. Kansas City Police Captain Ben Caldwell recalled the grisly case, stating, "This one touched a lot of people because she was an innocent child who was murdered in her own bed. It rattled detectives and officers who worked on it for decades." Locals echoed similar sentiments, with a bus driver for Fawn's high school and church, Monty Clark, stating, "I used to pass by there, where her house used to be, every day on my route. I mean, she lived a few blocks from the school. Every time I went by there, I'd think about this case." The initial investigation left detectives stumped. Though every lead was run down, every tip chased, and every piece of evidence examined, there was little for investigators to go on. Though CSI was able to collect bodily fluids, there wasn't much that could be done with them in 1989 due to limited forensic technology. Still, the evidence that was collected was put into storage for future testing, and though the official investigation eventually went cold, Fawn's family never stopped fighting for justice. They frequently asked for new testing to be carried out on the evidence and raised money to help fund it. They also put up billboards throughout the area, asking for tips and offering reward money. Shortly after Fawn's death, 3 teenagers came to the attention of investigators. Before long, the trio were charged with her murder, while one was even held for 8 months before DNA testing came back inconclusive and the boy was released. The remaining charges were eventually dropped after a key witness recanted their statement. The teens, for their part, pointed their fingers at the 9th Street Dog Gang, a group of young men who'd been causing trouble in the neighborhood. Monty Clark recalled, "There was a lot of activity going on back then. He observed that during this time, lots of people were going missing in the city. Monty's own neighbor, Tracy Snow, disappeared in 1984, never to be seen again. Her case has never been solved." In 2000, forensic advancements allowed investigators to pull a DNA profile from the bodily fluids left behind at the crime scene. Though the profile was entered into the CODIS database, there was no match. For decades, the case went cold again. In 2018, investigators re-interviewed the teenage suspects from the time of the murder, but DNA soon ruled them out of the case. Then in 2020, a break finally came. In November of that year, investigators announced that they had identified Fawn's killer using genealogy testing. This was the first time that a murder case had been solved by the Kansas City Police Department using such techniques. The name of the perpetrator was Donald Cox Jr., Fawn's own cousin, who was 21 at the time of the killing. He died in 2006 from an overdose. Initially, his death was thought to be suspicious, and even though the coroner later ruled that it wasn't, some of his blood had been kept aside. It was used to concretely tie Cox to Fawn's death. After learning of the breakthrough, Fawn's family was said to be sad but relieved. They had reportedly had their suspicions of Fawn's cousin over the years. Jody Loomis. On August 23, 1972, near Bothell, Washington, a couple discovered the partially clothed body of Jody Loomis along a secluded dirt road. The 29-year-old had been shot in the head but was still alive when she was discovered. Though the pair rushed her to the hospital, Jody was pronounced dead on arrival. On the day of her death, Jody had gone on a bike ride to visit her horse's stable, roughly 6 miles from her house. But instead of getting to spend time with her beloved animal companion, the young woman was stopped halfway to the stables, sexually assaulted, shot, and left to die on the side of a road. Investigators determined that a .22 caliber gun had been used, while forensics gathered bodily fluids from her body, though in 1972, this specific evidence could not provide answers to law enforcement. For decades, Jody's case remained unsolved. Very little progress was made following her murder, and some thought that this tragic case would never see answers. But in 2019, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office announced that a break in the case had come, using genealogy testing. They wrote, after the genealogist identified parents of possible suspects based on the family tree, police acquired an abandoned DNA sample from a cup one suspect had used. The Washington State Patrol Crime Lab subsequently matched the DNA to that found at the crime scene in 1972. In April of 2019, Terrence Miller, 78, was arrested and charged with Jody's murder. Miller was a retired heavy equipment operator. He enjoyed bowling and golf and was by all accounts a normal guy who ran a ceramics shop with his wife in Edmonds. In June of 2019, Miller's bail was set at $1 million. Jody's sister, Janice, told the judge that if the elderly man was released, he could disappear and the family would be left without answers once more. She stated, on that day, the murderer stole Jody's life. He also stole Jody from those that loved her and plunged us into a dark hole of grief that 46 plus years later, we still endure. Now for those of us that do remain, all we have now is the hope and justice and accountability for the hideous theft of Jody's life. And in the 46 plus years since that day, the accused has celebrated birthdays, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day. He has married, he has had children, he has lived his life. Miller stood trial in 2020. For 2 weeks, the jury heard testimony of the sexual assault and murder of 20-year-old Jody. Miller's defense did their best to put doubt into the heads of the jurors, questioning the reliability of forensic work and pointing out that certain swabs and evidence had been lost over time. The prosecution argued that this wasn't odd for an almost 50-year-old case. The defense further alleged that the FBI had not even noticed the semen stain on Jody's boot, which had helped identify her killer. They suggested that it had been planted there years later, and also alleged that early forensic work on the case had been sloppy, stating, "The point is that this sloppiness, this carelessness, calls into question the reliability of their testing, and the problem is that the unchecked, unreliable, sloppy testing is the foundation of all the forensic evidence in this case." Though jurors heard much evidence about the case, they were told nothing of Miller's criminal history. He had been accused on several occasions of sexually abusing children and was convicted of lewd conduct in 1968 and had molested a pre-teen girl in the mid-1970s. Prosecutors reportedly deferred the case in 1978. All in all, he had been accused of sex crimes at least 5 times between 1968 and 1999. The judge, meanwhile, received letters from family members who defended Miller's character, with his attorney stating all of them display that he's loyal, he's honest, that he's a man of high morals. In November of 2020, Miller was out on bond when his relatives called investigators to their home. The 78-year-old was found dead by his own hand. Later that same day, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. Jody's family were relieved by the verdict, but naturally distraught that Miller would never face a day in prison. Luis Albino. Luis Armando Albino was born in Puerto Rico in 1945. One of 6 children, he moved with his family to West Oakland, California in 1950, where his whole life, and those of his loved ones, would be flipped upside down just 1 year later. On February 21st, 1951, Luis spent time playing at the nearby park with his older brother, Roger, who was 10. While they were having fun together, they were approached by a woman who was described as being in her 30s and wearing a red bandana. The woman began a conversation with the children in Spanish and promised Luis that if he came with her, she would buy him sweets. The little boy, not knowing any better, agreed to go. Roger would later recall that he followed the pair for a while before he decided to return home and alert his parents as to what was happening. By the time the family returned to the scene, Luis and the woman were gone. The Oakland Police Department were in charge of the investigation, and they immediately launched a search for the missing 6-year-old. Initially, detectives didn't believe Roger's version of events, and theorized that Luis had accidentally wandered into the bay and drowned. As a result of this hypothesis, the Coast Guard was dispatched to search the waters around Jack London Square, an Oakland neighborhood, but no body was found, and no evidence was located. Later, the San Francisco Bay and numerous other bodies of water were searched too, but to no avail. The investigation into Luis's disappearance was short-lived, with investigators finding nothing to indicate where the boy had gone. Antonia, Luis's mother, continued to put pressure on the police force to find her son. She visited the Missing Persons Bureau at first on a daily basis. As time passed, she would go weekly, then monthly, and eventually yearly. As her English was poor, she always came in the company of one of her children or neighbors. For over a decade, the case lay dormant, though renewed interest came in 1966. Since Luis would now be 21, his family wondered if perhaps they would find a record of him in the military. Though they visited Puerto Rico in an effort to locate him, there was no sign of him there either. Lieutenant Dominic DeFraya of the Oakland Police told the media in 1966, "This is a rare situation when a boy disappears and doesn't eventually show up, alive or dead. I'd give an awful lot to find out why." With no success finding Luis in 1966, the case once again went cold. For decades, there was no movement. Finally, in 2020, 63-year-old Alida Alkin decided to take a DNA test just for fun. Alida was aware that she had an uncle who had gone missing as a boy because it was openly discussed by her family members. Her late grandmother, Antonia, had kept newspaper clippings of the abduction, one of which was always in her purse, while a photograph from his childhood was displayed in the house. Following the submission of her DNA results, Alida discovered that she was a 22% match for an elderly man. Though she reached out to him, she never heard back, and for a while, she put it to the back of her mind. 4 years passed before Alida began to search again. She visited the Oakland Public Library and looked at old Oakland Tribune articles, which featured photographs of Roger and Luis. As she and her daughters looked for more information about the man she'd matched with, they came to the conclusion that he was Luis Albino, her long-lost uncle. Following this, Alida reached out to law enforcement. Now equipped with new information and technology, the Oakland PD combed through information about the potential match and collected DNA samples from his living siblings. Though they repeatedly reached out to the man and his family, they didn't hear back, so they asked the FBI to dispatch agents to his place of residence. In June of 2024, Oakland PD told Alida that they had located her uncle Luis on the East Coast. She recalled, quote, "In my heart, I knew it was him, and when I got the confirmation, I let out a big yes. Luis is now both a father and a grandfather. He is also a retired firefighter and former Marine Corps member who spent time serving in Vietnam." The woman who had taken Luis on the day of his disappearance had subsequently boarded a plane with him and flown to the East Coast, where he lived the rest of his life. He was raised by a couple as if he were their own son, and fully believed that he was. It's not clear at this time if the unidentified woman was the one who raised him, or if she was part of some black market adoption scheme. In late June 2024, with assistance from Oakland police investigators, FBI victims advocates and the California DOJ, 79-year-old Luis was flown to California to meet his relatives. Alida recalled that her uncle hugged her and kissed her on the cheek, telling her, "Thank you for finding me." Though Luis has chosen not to speak to the media, Alida stated that he has some memory of the abduction and the cross-country journey he made afterwards, but that he was never able to wrangle answers from the adults in his life. Though, tragically, his mother had died in 2005, Luis reunited with his siblings, including Roger. Alida observed that the pair grabbed each other and had a really tight, long hug. They then discussed the kidnapping, their military service, and more. Roger died 2 months later. Alida stated, "I think he died happily. He was at peace with himself, knowing that his brother was found." She added that she hopes their story inspires and encourages other families with missing loved ones. Though Luis has been found, his kidnapping and those who are involved in it are still under investigation. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and reactions, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.